says, "Let's paint spring daffodils." And it has the line, the photo I'm working from. There's two photos here. It has a line drawing. Well, let's get there. Supplies. It has, for those of you who are a little bit nervous about drawing, I put in a drawing for you. It's just a suggestion. You can certainly change any of the elements that you want to. Then there's some tips for painting flowers. And I'll talk about some of these things while we're painting, but if I forget, you have it written down. So then there's a second page about that. And then there's a bonus photo. I had a chance when the sun was shining to go outside and take some photos of my flowers. And that's what's the inspiration for this painting today. So the ones that I chose, because when you're taking photos, it's hardly ever that you get one photograph that's going to be a perfect painting. So what I like to do is combine a few. So I'm going to combine this head-on shot of the one daffodil with a sideways shot of another. And I'm working on a really small canvas today, so it's only 5x8, and you can see that that's the reason I'm working on a small canvas is so that I can get everything in that one shot and do it in an hour. Pam says thanks everybody for telling me I'm right side up. Yay, I'm glad. I'll delete the other video later. I'd love to know where you're from. Some of you I recognize, some of you I don't. I have my students who are here. We usually have a weekly class. Actually, I have several weekly classes, but in different areas, but we're not able to get together right now. So we're doing this online, sort of the next best thing. Or at least it's the best I can think of. If you can think of another way to do it, please, shout out, let me know. And today, let me talk a little bit about the canvas, because I did have a question about prepping the canvas. I always assume you know what I'm talking about, and I shouldn't do that. So if you ever have a question about what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, at any point, either now during the chat roll, you can go ahead and type in a question, or you can give me, send me a question any other way you want to. But I have prepared this canvas with just a coat of acrylic paint, and it's just like a purple, a light purple. And I like to do that for a couple reasons. One of the reasons is that if I don't fill in every single area of the canvas, I still have a color showing through, and it looks finished even if I skipped a spot on my canvas. The other reason is because I like to use the complement of what I'm doing, and I was thinking I was going to be painting yellow daffodils, and it winds up I'm painting a white one. So there'll be a lot of yellow in it. I'm going to take a little creative license and change the colors a little bit to, just because I want to. So I have drawn, I gave you a line drawing. I know I hardly ever draw my design or my subject on here with pencil, but for flowers, some people have a hard time, not naming names, but some people have a hard time with painting flowers, and a lot of that has to do with the initial drawing of the flower. It's really quite specific. If you get the petals too big or in the wrong position, then it's not that flower anymore. So for that reason, I gave you the drawing, and since I gave you the drawing, I felt like I had to draw it on my canvas. There's a couple ways to get it on the canvas. One of them is to trace it and then put a piece of graphite paper under the tracing and then trace it. Or you can use my sketch as an idea on how to, proportion your elements and do it that way. So I'm going to do it this way because I just I don't want to trace it. I don't like tracing it. I used to do it all the time, but I don't want to do it anymore. So getting ready for this, I started drawing it and I thought, oh, you probably would want to see how I do that. So I stopped drawing it. I have it almost all drawn, the big flower anyway. But I started off with just a little circle in the beginning here, just to center, to decide where in this whole area I want to have that main flower. So that circle represents my center. And then there's another little circle inside that circle, which is the deep throat of this flower. And then there are 6 petals. So a lot of this is an observation, you know, and then there's a little point on the petal. I'm not going to draw all of that in. I'll paint it in. But just for you to know, so I have 6 petals, 3 of them laying on top, and then the other 3 are laying underneath the main 3 petals. So, and I'm just going to sketch them. There's kind of chunky, and they're at equidistant from each other. And it's from looking at them. That's how you get to know what the characteristics are. And that's just like anything else that you paint. You're looking at it as critically as you can, trying to figure out how the parts go together. Last week when we did the chick, I talked a little bit about how, you know, you have to make sure that the eye and the beak are in the right proportion on the right line. This is similar. You just need to be observant. So here's my last petal, and if I look at my photograph, it doesn't quite come out as far as some of these others. It depends on where it's how the flowers tipped. And then not all flowers are, you know, perfect either. So I'm going to try to find my photograph. I'll talk a little bit about supplies. Oh, I guess I didn't finish drawing. I didn't finish drawing it. Let's do this. I'll finish drawing it. I'm going to check to see if anybody has any questions. And then we'll talk about, you know, my paint and what I'm using. Okay, so here I've drawn the main flower. The flower has to have a stem. Anything that you do with flowers, I want you to always think about the growth direction. The growth direction is like where the center of the flower attaches to the stem. So you can't see it in here, but I can imagine it. So I'm going to draw an imaginary line from the center of my flower. I'm going to give it a little bit of a curve because that's prettier than having a straight line. And I'm going to give it a stem. The stems on daffodils are pretty substantial. And then there's always like this, you know, dead sheath or something here that we'll put on the daffodil. And you can, if you're following along with the instructions, then you can look at the photograph. And I could probably put the photograph here too. I'm going to get rid of all my extra paper. Okay, so here's my photograph. You don't really see, oh, you can see that little dried up piece of flower leaf, whatever it is, that protects the daffodil when it's emerging. So that's, and I don't see it on this one, but I can do whatever I want because it's my painting. And I always think it's interesting to see. So then I have this other little piece here, this little sideways daffodil, because I just thought when I looked at the canvas, it just was a whole lot of empty space to fill in with leaves. So I wanted something interesting, but something that I didn't have to work too hard at. So I'm just going to draw in the overall shape of the petals. They are divided then. I'll divide them for you too. And there's a little trumpet that you see. So now I'll divide. You can see 6 in the photo, or 5 actually. So more or less like that. And then I want to connect a stem. So this is the center of the flower, and I want to connect the stem, and I'll just go off here. So one of the reasons I don't like to draw in pencil on my canvas is that you're going to have a little bit of that graphite mix in with your paint, and it might muddy up your color. So I like to start everything off with paint, and I did that last time. You can go back and see the chick video if you want to. It's still on the page. I am going to start cleaning up some of those videos and deleting them. So, and then I'll put them on YouTube. So you can, they won't totally disappear, but they'll be off the Facebook page. It's getting a little too cluttered up. And then I think I'm not going to draw in all the leaves. I'm just going to put in a few for you, and then later on I can, you know, see where I want to add another leaf. And I liked there was a bent leaf in one of my photos, so I'm going to put that in too. I'm going to have it overlap everything right about there. All right, so if you can't, you'll see it what I'm doing in a minute when I start painting. All right, let me go back here, see if there's any questions. Hi, Robert. Hi, Gail. Hi, Judy. Oh, hi, Judy. I am going to send you that picture. My chick's not quite dry yet. Mary Emma from Phoenix. Awesome. Oh, you're up early. Let me see. Last week I had some people from Brazil and all kinds of cool places. All right, so if you don't know who I am, I'm Lena Ferrara. I am an artist here in Central Pennsylvania, and I teach workshops and weekly classes, and I take a group to Italy. This would have been the second year, but we're going to do that next year instead. If you're interested in finding out more about me, I have a website, and it's www.lena-ferrara.com. So you can read up on me, or if you want to contact me or you have any questions. Let's talk a little bit about the supplies. I'm using basically, oh, I hid my paper towels. There they are. Here we go. I have paper towels cut into squares. I have, I only use a couple brushes. So I have maybe a filbert. Well, actually, they're both filberts today. Two different sizes, one bigger one for the background and a smaller one for the petals. And then my liner brush, my poor abused liner brush, is just in case I need to do detail, you know, the little centers. Probably I'll use the liner brush for that. I have a palette knife because I try to pre-mix my color before I start. And today I'm using a lot of the mixes from last week when we did the chick together. And I have a little cotton ball. Some of you might be interested in this. This cotton ball is got clove oil on it, a few drops of clove oil, and then I stick that in my palette box with my paint, and it keeps my paint fresh. So if you've never tried that, it's awesome. Don't mix it in with my paint because I don't think my paint would ever dry then. It does affect the drying time, but the fumes from the clove oil, and it's non-toxic. You can put it on a toothache, so I don't worry about having that in with my paint or breathing it in. It makes your paint smell nice. I like it, and then my mixes stay nice and usable. So paints. The paints I'm using today, and I have a list of the paints in that PDF also for you. If you want to get the PDF, I typed in the address in the comments, so you can scroll back and look, and then you can just click on that and you can download the PDF. So here I have titanium white, cad yellow, medium, yellow ochre. I have cad orange out today. It's not a color I normally use, and I put that in the optional list. Cad red, medium, transparent red oxide, alizarin crimson, ultramarine blue, and then I put out some green. I put out sap green, and this this color is not on your list. It's Terra Verte, and I don't normally use it, but I ran across the tube while I was squeezing out my paint this morning. I thought, oh, I haven't used that in a while. Let's see what that does. So sorry about that. But these optional colors you can mix. This orange, you could just mix yellow and red together and get the orange. And the green is just blue and yellow. So if you don't have those colors or you don't want to put them out, you don't have to worry about that. So I did, I mixed a very light yellow, and I've mixed I'm sorry, I need to go back and tell you what I put in there. Yellow ochre and white. And then this next color is just the cad yellow and white. And I am going to make a green for you. I have a little bit of an orange here, so that you can either use the yellow and red and get an orange, or you could use the cad orange and just add a little bit of yellow to that because it's too dark for the photo that I'm using. There are some beautiful, I have some beautiful daffodils out there that have that bright orange center, but that's not what I'm painting today. I did give you a photo of it because I thought, oh, that'd make an awesome paint. Then I'm going to take a little bit of white and just spread it around different places on my palette. You'll see I have it here and here and here and here, because this way, when I start to paint, I don't have to go back into there and into my original pile of white and accidentally get contaminated. I'm also going to mix a violet here, and that's alizarin crimson and ultramarine blue. Every time I go into my color, I'm going to try to wipe my palette knife. I say try. It's instinctive for me now, but just in case it's not instinctive for you, try to keep that in mind. This way you're not contaminating your original colors. And I want to get a lighter violet version, and I'm going to use that in my shadow areas on the white. I'm also going to use some greens in my white. So I need to mix that up. I have the sap green. I'm going to use that today. And I'm going to add, let me get this white here because my knife's not really clean. Sap green and white. And I'm going to see what this Terra Verte's going to do for me too. So let me just experiment with you. So that's the Terra Verte. Hard for me to not pronounce it correctly. I mean, it's Terra Verte, but you know, you can't go around saying that. There we go. Oh, it's like a bluish green. It's very pretty. And I'm going to need a dark green, and I don't want to use sap green straight because it's way too bright. So I'm going to take some sap green and tone it down a little bit. Today, I could use any of these reds to tone it down because reds are complementary to green. But I think today I'm going to use whatever this color is. Transparent red. Thanks. Thanks. It's not like somebody, normally somebody in class will say transparent red. So I heard it in my mind. My students tell me that they can hear me in their minds. Well, guess what? I hear you too. So. All right, maybe this isolation thing is getting to me. I didn't think it was. There we go. I'm going crazy. All right, no, this is my normal. It's not anything unusual for me to talk to myself. Hi Sylvia. Hi Susie. Susie, where are you from? Hi Chris. Oh, Chris says she needs that. Susie, if you want the PDF, scroll up in my in the comments, and I put a link there. I'll also put a link at the bottom in case there's so many comments that it's difficult to scroll up and down. All right, so all right, got my drawing on here. Have my colors mixed. It's time to paint. I'm going to grab my filbert brush because I want to start off. Let me get a photo. I don't need my drawing anymore. Goodbye. Let's see if I can, you don't need to watch my paper towels, right? So I'll put my photo up there. There we go. So I'm using the photo as a guideline to show me where the darks and where the lights are in my flower. And I like to study it before I start. So when I'm looking at it, I'm looking really for the dark and the light values. Values is the terminology for lights and darks. So in order to make this flower have dimension, you have to have dark in addition to the light. If I just painted all of this white with my white paint, it would be, first of all, be pretty boring, and it's not going to look realistic. So I like to start off with something that's not white and then save the white for later. So that's why I have, actually I should have a lighter, oh, I have a gray mix, so I'll use some of that too. And then I want to notice the sun direction. And the sun in this photo is coming from the upper right. And I know that because my shadow is right here. So the shadow is opposite the sun. The other thing I want to point out to you about that shadow is look at all the beautiful color in there. There's some oranges and some yellows right against the center. And that happens because these petals are reflective. And I wrote a little bit more about that in that PDF for you. So if I neglect to mention everything, it's all written down. The other thing I'm noticing is that there's little tiny lines in the petals, like I don't know if they're vein lines or whatever they are, little grooves. They're all pointing toward my center. So anytime I make those little lines, I want to make sure that I'm aiming toward that center. So if I'm right here in this very middle part of the petal, coming towards that center, the line's straight. But on the outside edges of the petal is a gentle curve, always going toward my growth. It's called growth direction, always pointing toward my center. No matter where I am, I'm going to be curving those little lines towards that center point. And it's going to make your flowers look much more natural. The other thing that makes them look more natural is very close value changes. So I'm not going to have a real dramatic dark in here and well, the light's light. I can't, because it's a white flower, it's going to be, you know, close to white. But I don't want to go too dark anywhere except maybe in the center. But even that's not quite black. It's more of a dark green. So that's what I'm going to use when I get to that. But most of the time when I started painting, I really study the line. So I study the lines, I study the colors, and I try to figure out where I'm going before I get to this point where I have, you know, something on my canvas. And then I'm trying to get rid of, I don't want to have so many things to think about, because when you start painting, there are so many different things that are going on in your mind. You know, what color is it? Is the shape right? So I try to eliminate as many of the variables up front. So that's why I tell you, think about it before you start. So you're noticing where those shadows are going. Mix the colors before you start, so you have an idea. You know, you don't have to go back and then try to mix the color and interrupt your train of thought. So here I'm noticing as I was painting, I don't really have a color that I'm happy with for that shadow color. I have a gray mixed here and I have a blue, but I don't want the gray is too dull, too dead looking, so I just put a little bit of blue in with it. And now I'm gonna just add a little bit of white. I may not use that color, I don't know. I'm giving myself options. I may go just use the screen with a little white. We'll see. We'll see when I start. Okay, so having said that, let's actually start painting. I have this part's going to be in sun, right? So it's going to be warmer, meaning I'm going to be using more yellows up here. And in order to give myself some contrast, I want to use more blues or grays down at the bottom on the other petals, the petals that are in more in shadow. So let me start off with the yellows because yellow is a color that's really changeable. So meaning if I put a color in with my yellow, it's going to change it. So it's hard. Yellow's hard to keep its identity. So I want to start it off with a clean brush, and I'm filling in this top petal that is mostly white with just a little bit of a dark edge, a little folded over edge on the upper part of it. So it's a little too yellow. So when I look at a white flower, it's hardly ever just white. It's got other colors in it, and I like to try to exaggerate that a little bit. If I start off with white, I'm never going to be able to get lighter than that. White's the lightest color in my toolbox, so I want to be sparing with it. So I'm going to put some of that in, and then I'll look and see there's some subtle, I think it's green. If not, it's going to be because I said so. And I want to just I'm looking at the shape. It's a little grayer than that, so maybe I'll pick up some gray with my color. If you notice, I didn't wipe my brush. I just went back into the other color. That grayed the down. It still has a greenish cast, but it's a little bit grayer. All right, so I place the colors next to each other. I am going to do one petal at a time. A lot of times I jump around and fill in an area, colors side by side. Today I'm not going to do that. Today I'm just going to work on one petal at a time. And then I'll work on this petal, and if you have questions, pop them in, because then I'll check to see what people are asking. I'm going to make sure I have the shape right. Okay. Then the next petal is really quite light, and it has a little bit of a bluish shadow right up here. So again, I'm going to start off with the light yellow. And I'm doing this so that I have something to work with. Like I know that I can put a highlight on here. Actually, since my brush was a little dirty, it's got a tiny greenish cast, which doesn't bother me. Flowers are the one subject that many people shy away from painting. It takes a little bit longer to paint flowers that are pretty, realistic, and pretty, if that's your goal. I mean, you can abstract things too. You really want to be careful about your blending in flowers. You want to make sure there's a nice transition and not a hard edge anywhere, unless there's a shadow here. That edge is probably too hard. So let me go back, and I picked up a little bit of lighter color on my brush. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with that yet. I'll leave it for now. And then this petal, if you look at the photograph, the petal is half in shadow and half in light, and it's actually darker than that petal. So I'm going to make my color just a little bit darker. And I'm putting in where I see the lightest value. I'm going to wipe my brush. Oh, there's a little corner right here that's a little bit lighter. And then I'm going to jump over to my grayish. Oh, it's still too gray. I want to put some blue in it. Oh, I forgot to tell you that sometimes I use walnut oil to help my paint move. And I just have it in this little jar. I stick the little jar on my palette and then just dip the corner of my brush into it. That's about right. Let me get some more lighter color around it. And there's just a little bit of this right at the top. I'm using tiny amounts of paint. And I really want to soften that up, and if the value is too dark to start with, which it may have been, I just pick up a little bit of white on my brush and go over that. And then in between the values, where the colors are meeting, that's when I want to take a minute and blend between them. So I'm just touching right between 1, 2, 3, 4, wipe my brush. 1, 2, 3, 4, wipe my brush. All right, so I'm gonna keep working around the flower, but before I go any further, I just want to check to see if anybody has any questions. Oh, Karen's from New York. Karen, I know you. Oh, 2 Karens. Karen Wooch, I know you. I don't know why. Karen Edler, hi. Let's see, who else is here? Hi, Chris. If you have any questions, go ahead and type them in. And if you're just joining me, my name is Lena Ferrara, and I am an artist here in Central Pennsylvania. I paint mostly more realism. If you're interested in finding out what I do or any more information about me, you can just check my website out. It's www.lena-ferrara.com. All right, let's continue on with this little petal here. I'm putting the light in first. And my brush is, you know, it's a little dirty. It's not as, I don't have, it was clean when I started off, and that's why I started in the lighter area. And this is mostly shadowy color, so I'm going to pick up a little bit of green. You can see a little difference now. I didn't want to use the same shadow color in every petal, but I don't want them to be too different that I have a kaleidoscope going on. So if I used the same grayish blue in each petal, then you wouldn't be able to see the difference between the petals. I probably will add a little bit of that grayish blue shadow color on the other side in here, because I can, it's not touching that one, so I'll be able to differentiate between those again. All right, and then I'm just going to do some blending, and when I'm blending, I'm laying my brush almost at a 33-degree angle, because this way I have more bristles to work with. If I try to hold my brush up like that and blend, I don't have anything to work with, you know, just a few bristles on the tip. So I want to make sure that I have the maximum efficiency. All right, there we go. And then this it's really better for me to blend from the outside going in. And the other thing I'm doing when I'm always thinking about that center, that direction, because I can make little marks in my petals just by pulling by my blending. So I want to make sure that that works for me and not against me. So I'm going to be thinking about that growth direction. Okay, here I have a big area of shadow right in there. So I'm going to avoid that, and I'm just going to put in, I think I'm going to go with a pale, really, really pale blue gray. There we go. It's not pale enough. Let me get more white in it. There we go. Now I'm going to paint around my flower with a darker value, and that's going to help the whole flower pop, because right now I'm on a background that's fairly light in value. Okay, now I can go back and put my dark in, and I'm gonna, stick with that bluish gray, I think. There's a lot of yellow reflected there, so I want to leave a space for it, because if I try to put the yellow on top of the blue, I'm just going to get green. And it's orangey, actually. I'm going to take that out a little bit further. And the shadow has little ruffly edges because it's a shadow from this center that has lots of ruffles on it. So there, I'm going to leave this a little more distinct than the shadows, the other shadows on the petal. This is a cast shadow, so it's cast from, it's an object that's interrupting the sunlight. These smaller shadows are more proximity shadows, so they're caused also by an interruption in light, but it's not, it's because something's overlapping. Okay, there. Darken that a little bit. I usually wait for the end to darken areas in the flower, so stop it. I'm going to switch to a clean brush to get those little colors in here inside the shadow that are reflections of the center. So I started off with yellow again, because yellow is the color that changes. And then there I'm going to put in a little bit of orange. I may change the proportions there, but I won't know until I get my center in. All right, now let's move to this other petal here. I'm going to do the same thing. It's sort of more on the warm side, so I'm going to start off with my yellow, which obviously is not going to be yellow because my hands are dirty. my brush is dirty. So it's more of a greenish, but it's still light. And then there's a shadow there. I'm just leaving a space for it. And there's another sort of a shadow right in here. So I'm going to leave a space for that also. Okay. Now let's go back. I think I'll do the bluish gray up here. And a lot of that is just, what do I see, first of all? And then, what's not going to get me into trouble? Because if I had bluish gray here and I put more bluish gray there, I'm going to lose my edge. And then this is a little bit lighter shadow, so let me pick up a little bit more white on my brush when I put that color in. And it is underneath this petal, so I'm going to make sure when I go back that I take care of my edges. Again, I'm blending towards this growth direction. So none of the petals are finished, but at least I have something I can, work with. This may be too dark, but you really don't know until you get everything in, and then you can decide. So right here in the center, I want to make that fairly dark. So I'm going to put green in here and hope I didn't get myself into trouble, because I want to put lighter little, I don't know what they are, pistils, stamens, whatever they're called, in there on top of it. All right, then around here, now I really should clean my brush. I don't use thinner while I'm painting. So meaning I don't go and clean my brush with turpentine or odorless turp. So what I'm going to do instead to neutralize my brush is I'm just going to go into some white, and I'm going to load my brush up and wipe it out on my paper towel. And I might need to do that 1 or 2 times. And that's going to get enough of the paint, not quite out of the brush, but it's more like it's neutralized. So I've gotten rid of the blue. Switch paper towels here for a minute. Okay, and I forgot what I was doing. Oh yeah, I want to get that yellow in the center part. You can see in the photograph that it's sort of yellow in here and then orange around the edges. So I'm going to go back into the yellow, and I'm going to place it, and then I want to streak it out. I'm going to be really careful as I go around that dark green because I don't want to get that into my paint and contaminate my yellow. Okay, so I sort of gave myself a circle. And when I really look closely, it's streaky. So let me just give it a few streaks. Then I'll put the orange in, and then I'll give myself more streaks. Okay, so this pretty orange goes around the center. Now I want to really be careful when I'm placing this. I want to make sure that my edge, the edge of my petal, do you see I'm jiggling? I hope you can see it. I'm jiggling back and forth so I have a nice little ruffly edge. I want more yellow in that color. It's blah. There we go. And when this dries, I can go back and reinforce some colors if I want to. Just making sure that my edge is not straight, that it's got, a little bit of ruffle to it. Now, I want to pull in, I'm filling in the spots that I left blank, but I haven't quite done my ruffling yet. And let's see. I think I want to add some more yellow in the center area. Just going to tap a little more color in, and you'll see why in a minute. I need to have enough yellow in there so that when I pull the little ruffles in, that my yellow doesn't disappear and then everything turn orange. All right, so I'm going to use the same brush, but you could probably use a liner brush if this feels uncomfortable to you. I'm going to start at the edge, and then I'm going to pull, remember my growth direction. Oh, yeah, there you go. I'll fill that back in. I'm going to pull these. I'm trying to lift up as I pull in toward the center. And everything's always aiming toward that center point. In my mind, I have a dot right in the middle of it. Why don't I just give you a dot so that it won't be in my mind? You'll see exactly what I'm talking about. And I'm just going to put a yellow dot and let it sit on top of that green there. And I'll pull that into shape in a minute. So I have that dot, and everything's going to be aiming toward that dot. So I'm pulling a little bit of orange color into my yellow so that it's causing little tiny streaks, giving me more of a ruffly appearance. This one I want to pull out. Oh, look at that. And I'm wiping almost every stroke. Every stroke I am wiping. So it's going to be really easy to lose that yellow, so be careful. If you lose it, when it dries, you can go back in. You can do this multiple times. You could even wipe it out if if it's not doing what you want it to do. There we go. So all of my strokes are aiming toward that center. If I'm here, I'm not stroking this way. I'm stroking toward that middle. And I already have, I like it. Okay. It's important too to tell yourself that you like what you're doing. Usually I do. And if I don't, sometimes I lie. Okay. This I really do. So when I look at my little center, it's almost like a star shape coming out. There's 1, 2, 3, 5 little stamens or pistils or whatever they are. And I'm going to try to keep my color clean, so I'm going to reload it every time. Give myself, I have 4, one more. I'm not pushing too hard because I have green under there, and I don't want to stir it up. So that's working for me. I like that. Now I'm going to evaluate the overall. I think that I need to blend a little bit. Whoops. Yeah, drop the brush in there. That doesn't help. I'm going to blend a little bit more. And again, I'm aiming toward that center. if I want to create little ruffles in the petals, those little lines that you see in the photograph, then I can go on the chisel edge of my brush and pull in. Do you see how I created like a little vein? I don't want to do too many of those because it's going to start looking a little stripy. But I can, if I add them and I want to get rid of them, I'll show you how to do that. I'll put them in first and then we can get rid of them. This one doesn't have very many, but this one does. Now, normally I would rotate my canvas to make it easier for me to pull this. It's easier to pull towards you than push away from you. So you really want to, I actually can move my chair and then I don't have to twist my arm around. But they're very subtle little streaks. You can make them more dramatic if you want to by loading up with a darker value. But I'm just using the paint that's already on my canvas and pull in there. Same thing here, but I don't want to go into my cast shadow. So, and I do want to lighten this edge up a little bit. So let me do that because I'm not feeling like there was enough separation between those two petals. So Sylvia is a watercolor artist. Now, I don't know how you're going to translate this to watercolor, but I'm sure you'll figure out a way. I think I want to darken that a little. Maybe I want to make it a little bluer. So let me pick up a little bit of my ultramarine blue mix with a ultramarine blue and white. Yeah, that's better. I didn't want this shadow to be exactly the same as these other shadows. So and if I want to ruffle that edge a little bit more, make it a little more distinct, I'm wiping my brush really well and holding my microphone cord. So I have paint all over my microphone cord. I have paint all over my phone because I accidentally dropped it into my palette before we started. But it's just an occupational hazard. All right, I'm going to put some lighter value up against that shadow. So that's going to make that shadow appear darker. I don't really want to darken that too much. And then I can finesse the edge and give myself some more little wiggles so that it looks more like what's in the photograph. Okay, so that's good. I want to go back now and check the edges of my petals to make sure they're distinct because they are rather distinct in the photograph. This petal right here has a lighter edge on it, so I'm going to reestablish that. I probably lost it when I painted. This is a lighter value, and now I'm just going into the white because I have color underneath it. So it's going to mix with the color underneath it and not really appear white. I mean, too stark. It's going to look white, but not too stark. If I had started all these petals out with white, then I wouldn't be able to lighten. I would only be able to darken. So that's why I don't want to start them with white. Okay, now again, when I blend this in, I'm going to make little lines with the chisel edge of my brush. This shadow isn't giving me the shape I want it to have, so I'm going to go back in and re-establish that. There's a little bit of a light edge above it. The other reason for painting the background in a color is especially if you're painting white flowers. If I tried to paint this on a white background, it's really not going to show up enough. And then I'll be surprised when I put the value in that I want to have in there. And it might not be a good surprise. I'm going to give it a little bit of a stem here before I put some background color in. So I'll go in with that's too green. Let me go, I'm going to add some of that Terra Verde. Oh, I like that because now I have warm and cool green in there. And I want some darker value. So I had pre-mixed my darker. Okay, I have to think now because I don't have a model. for the stem. So if the light's coming from the upper right, then the shadow should be on on the left side of my stem. And I'll just, there's a leaf going over there, so that'll be fine if that's all dark. Okay, so now let me show you what happens when I start putting the dark value around it. And I did mix a dark green, but that dark green is going to be too bright. So I think you know what? Let me just do what I tell you I do, and rather than brush mix and get myself into trouble. I used to brush mix all the time, and it's harder to teach people to paint if you're brush mixing, because there's a lot of sort of intuition that goes into it. So if I separate the steps out, it's much easier for you to understand what I'm doing. I'm mixing, I started off with the green, okay? I add a little bit of transparent red to tone it down, and add a little bit of blue to darken it up, because I don't want I want a dull, dark color back there. I'm going to test it before I make more of it. I'm going to pick up a little bit of my oil, my walnut oil, and I'm going to place, oh, that's a good color. I'm going to paint around my flower. Now, I could have probably, no, I couldn't have. If I had painted the dark in first, I would have dirtied up my flower. So I'm painting this around it. If you want to do it in stages, you can certainly, and I'm also correcting any shapes that I see that I might have, you know, maybe not gotten it round enough. Or if I got it too big, I can cut back with this color. One of the things about painting flowers that's really important is that your edges are very organic, rounded, soft, and you don't have too many squared off. I used to paint with a wonderful flower artist. Her name is Peggy Stodgel. Some of you may know her. And we were in class one time. I can't even remember where I was. I think I was in Massachusetts. And she said to me, Lena, it looks like a still life artist. Your flowers look like a still life artist painted them. And I didn't understand what she was saying. But later on, she explained it to me. It's like, if you have sharp edges on your flowers, you have to have sharp edges on containers and glass. But if you have them on flowers, it just makes them look stiff and plastic. So I was painting plastic flowers. And the thing that really stuck with me from that comment was that, you know, really paying attention to those little subtle changes. See, I created a hard edge there. I'm going to have to go back and fix that. It's a straight edge rather. All right, I'm not going to go into my leaves with this color. I'm just giving you an idea of what this, how to judge the value now on your flower by painting the dark in around it. I had to be careful there. I don't have to be as careful as I go away from the flower. And there's a leaf in here, so I'm going to avoid. I'm not going to take the time to paint all the edges all the way out to the edge. Partly because, I don't know, I may put more leaves in there. But I'm just going to get enough in here so that you can, there we go, you can see. I'm also thinning the paint out a little bit as I go away from that flower, because I want some of that purple to show through. I'm not sure how much yet, so I'd rather not confine myself by putting thicker paint down. There we go. And now let me come down by the stem a little bit more so you can see that. So I might want to lay other leaves on top of that background, and if it's thin, it's going to be easier for me to do that. Okay. So that really changes your perception of this flower, doesn't it? Now I can judge a little bit more accurately if and how much light I want to put. That is beautiful now. Do you see that little flip that I had created, but that you couldn't see it when I had it on against the light value background? You get a whole different feeling. Like now it's a much more dramatic painting. Before it was a softer, still also nice. It depends on what, mood you're trying to create. I like drama. Only in painting, not in life. I like peace in my life, and drama in my paintings. Okay, so right in here, this edge is getting lost. So I'm going to go back in and, oops, not pick that color. Go back to my shadow color and tuck it right behind that petal. Now it's just a balancing act of going back and lightening areas, darkening others. Here again, I'm seeing that this petal is not laying on top. You don't necessarily need to sharpen up every edge in the flower because that creates a stiffness too. So I don't want to do that, but I do want to have some edges. If it looks muddy or if it looks like, well, what's going on there, you don't want people looking at your painting wondering what did she plan to do there, because it doesn't look like she did it, or he. All right, I'm going to take a minute and check. Oh, that looks pretty good. Let me see. Oh, yeah, Judy loves Peggy. I know, she was so wonderful. Thank you, Chris. It was, well, isn't it easy? I mean, I know you might think I make it look easy, but it's not. If you divide it up into those steps, it's really not that hard. All I'm doing is looking for the light and dark and what color is it, and put those all together. And no, I don't worry. Like, I could have at any point thought, oh, that doesn't look right. And that goes through my mind. I do think that, but I don't verbalize it, and I ignore it until I get to the end of the painting, and then I decide if it looks right or not. Okay, so right here, I want to darken the stem a little bit so that petal shows up. I go back to my dark green. There we go. All right, let's get this other one in here. That's really not, I'm not going to do a lot. I'm just going to block it in with some light value. I have the petals drawn there for you already, so I'm going to leave just a little space between the petals so I can sneak in some shadow color to separate. And I'm not concerning myself as much with painting each petal separately. Just get something in there. Get my bluish gray, just a separator between those. And a little bit of, it's a really light orange here. I'm not going to put a lot of effort or thought into that one. There's a stem, it's sort of looking like a butterfly, so I need to fix that because I didn't bring the light petal across here. There we go. I'm going to get a stem in, and I'm going to start off with the dark value. There's a lot of overlap going in here. I'm not sure what's going to overlap what, so pick up my lighter green. And right in here, there's some orange that I'm going to get in. I'm just looking at the photo and noticing that. Surprising, sort of surprising when I never looked at the back of the daffodils before. I will now. So painting helps you really become more observant. It's almost like you're more alive. It's really funny. Sometimes people will say to me that they never really noticed the color of the sky. I mean, they knew it was blue, but you don't look at all the variations in color until you start painting and trying to mix that. So it's such a wonderful thing that we get to do. I'm going to put in some leaves, and I'm using the Terra Verte and white, the color I did not put on the list because I just picked it up this morning. But it really is a nice green. Gonna have to add that to my list of paints to use. I normally use the same colors every single time I paint, unless it's something specific, like if I'm doing a rooster. Oh, that would be fun to do for you guys. If I do a rooster and it has beautiful bright colors, then I'm going to pick up those colors. I'm going to do, like use cobalt blue, colors that are not normally on my palette. Giving that leaf a little bit of a shadow underneath there. And also other color in here, because not one color of anything is not going to be appealing. Let me just roughly put something in there. And I want to do this little dried up thing that's around. Yeah, I'll find out the real name for the dried up thing. But it's yellowish. It's actually more yellow ochre. It's kind of a dull color, so I'm going to pick up a little, put a little bit of gray into it so it's not too bright. And it sort of comes out around the stem like a dried covering. Lighten it up a little bit so it shows up. Now at this point, now I can go away from my reference photo, and I obviously have gone away from my reference photo because this is not on this particular flower, and just decide what's important for the painting rather than copying what I'm seeing. And I don't copy everything I see. You might have seen that. Here, let's get some leaf in. I want to go with a bigger brush because I have ground to cover here. Let's get a little bit of dark. What was that? That's part of a leaf, right? Well, if it's not, it's going to be. Not sure what that was. There's a leaf here. Get some light on it. I don't want anything else in my painting to be as detailed, as interesting as my flower. So I'm going to be a lot looser in the application of the paint for the other items. Right now I'm going to tuck some more dark back in around there, and I'll go back to that pile I mixed. I'm not going to do that corner because I'm going to run out of time, I think. I guess I don't run out of time. I can be on here as long as I want. As long as you stay with me, I'll be here. We'll finish this little painting up. So let me just slap my paint in here. I'll be a little bit more careful as I go around the elements that are important, like that little flower center. I'm sorry, that side view flower. And I've established these leaves as rather important to me, so I'm going to be a little more careful around those. And if you're just joining, or if you joined late, my name's Lena Ferrara. I am an artist in Central Pennsylvania. And you can read more about me on my website at lenaferrara.com. It'll tell lena-ferrara.com. It will tell you, where I'm teaching after this is over. Right now, I'm teaching on Facebook Live, so you can join me every Friday. Every Friday until we, are back out on this in the world. I have to pick up a little bit more paint. I didn't mix quite enough, so it's probably going to change. Ooh, too bright, too bright. Go back into my, here's some old transparent red from another painting. So let me use that, and this way I don't get everything dirty. All right, so now into this, I can come with some lighter green and just give the impression that I have more leaves going on in the background. And I don't want them all facing the same way, so I'll overlap some. And probably at this point what I would do normally is stop and think about where else I want it. And the paint's wet, so I can, you know, go have lunch or go take a walk and then come back to it. I think this is background. I want it to be background. Let me come in a little bit closer in here. And you can probably see that I'm not, the color I've put in at this point is not exactly the same as the color this dark I started off with, but that's okay. I can add anything I want back there. I don't want it to be so stiff and have everything exactly the same and look like it's, you know, pasted on there. So I'm going to only be careful where I have something important. And then I can come back in and fill in these little gaps that I have with, just picked up a little green there. Here I want to finish that leaf. Okay, I am going to finish that corner because it's driving me a little. It doesn't have to be as dark as this, because what I'm doing here by putting the dark around this flower is telling you where to look. This is my center of interest. This is the thing that's most important about this painting. So I'm going to have the darkest dark against the lightest light. As I go off into the distance, I don't want to put anything too interesting back there. So I'm going to just pick up a lighter. I'm looking around my palette and saying, oh, okay, well, what else do I have that I can stick in here that, you know, isn't going to be jarring? And that other green that I was using for the shadow, it's a little bit warmer green. Warmer meaning it's got more yellow in it. And it's a little bit lighter, not a whole lot. So I'm just going to fill that in around the edges. I think a lot of times we get hung up on, oh, this has to be a certain way and it has to be, you know, perfectly, you know, my edges all have to show, and they don't. It's how you want it to be. So I can sharpen up some of the points. I think this leaf is too fat, so I'm just going to lose it. Lose the edges, rather. And you know how I just drew little lines into my flower with the paint that was behind it? I can do the same thing creating leaves with that paint also. I'll show you a couple of those. In the far distance, that's where here, okay, so here I have a leaf pointing this way, another leaf pointing that way, and this needs to have something interrupted. So I'm going to go that way with a leaf, and I'm going to pick up a light green, and just because it's going to mix in with the paint under it, it's not going to be too jarring. What else? I need something back here. I could add another flower, but just, you know, let me switch to my other brush, smaller brush. I just want to see a little bit of it. I don't want to paint another, you know, big flower. So I see another few petals in my photograph. I could just leave that in. And that color is mixing with my background color, and it's more subdued now. Can you see that on the monitor? I'm pushing up my... I can see it on one monitor and not the other. Yep, Jessica just said can't see the bottom. Okay, you know what happened? I think my camera must have shifted. I'm pushing it up so you can see it. There we go. So now I just put in a few shapes. They're just like triangles, and it looks like a flower, you know, and it's behind this stem. I'm going to also add a little bit of a stem. All I did was whatever paint was left on my brush, I pressed hard and pushed it out away from, so you can see I'm doing that. When I put more pressure on this brush, I can remove some of the paint that's on there. If I have very light pressure, I can blend it. And there are a few little streaks in this, in the petals. Let me show, I'm sorry, the leaves. Let me show you that. So I'm just going to pick up a little bit darker value on my brush. And I'm going to take that's a little too dramatic, but I will soften it. Just add a few little streaks that way. They're barely perceptible. I'm not even sure if you can see them. And then if there's any strange looking, you know, things here, I can fix that. Do you see how this leaf is running into that little light doohickey, that little light covering? I don't like that. So I'm going to come back in here and change the shape of it. There we go. So that it's overlapping rather than creating a tangent line where two lines are kissing. So I don't want to have any kissing on my canvas. That is something that I don't know how long, if you remember Helen Van Wyck, she used to have a painting show on PBS, and she talked about that all the time. Kissing. You don't want to have things kissing. Here I'm seeing a little bit of a straight edge again, so let me go back with a lighter value and bump this out a little bit. Oh, okay, everybody's happy now that I move my canvas up and they can see the bottom. Good. Let's see if there's any other questions. Let's see if I can go back and see if anybody's asked anything else that I want to make sure that I catch. Yeah, Judy. Yeah, another awesome painter. We've been around a long time. I love her books. I still have, I have to pull them out now that I mentioned her. I think it's color. She has maybe 4 or 5 books, and I have them all here. But I'm going to do that after we get off Facebook. All right, I think I have everything in that I want. This area maybe is a little confusing, so let me go back and put in some darker values in here. All right, I'm going to separate this stem, whoops, from this leaf. So I'm going to put a little bit of dark underneath this leaf on top of that stem. Then this area here is a little bit confusing, so I'm going to lighten up the top part of the leaf. There we go. So that it looks like it's coming in front of those other objects. I have a ragged edge here that I'm going to need to fix with some dark value in the background. And then right in here, I don't know what's going on here, so let me darken under that. I feel like, well, let me do that first, but I feel like I need some more oranges in the painting. So I'm going to add some oranges to the leaves. Oh, there's another thing. This is a kiss right here, so I need to either extend, let me think about that. If I extend this petal or this leaf, it's going to look too long. It's actually looking a little too long as it is, so it doesn't look natural. Let me go back in there and shorten it up, and then I'll get rid of my problem. Yeah, I feel like I need more oranges, so I'm just going to add a few orange touches to my leaves. I put that in there. It's too dark for the for where I put it. So I don't want to put it there, but I could put it in here in this leaf. Maybe in this one a little bit. I don't want to go too crazy in the leaves that are further away from the flower. Here I can put a lighter value in there. I don't, when I put accents in, I don't want to disturb my value flow. So if it's in a light area, I want to put a lighter accent. That was a little yellow with my orange in there. Just brightened it up a little bit and gave it a little more interest than just green. You know, the flowers in the, or sorry, the petals in the background or the leaves in the background, I don't want to have too much interest in them. I do want to sharpen up that one edge just because it's up against my flower. And I want to darken a little bit right here. There we go. So that my center shows up against the background. All right, I think I'm finished for this one. I'm thrilled that you were able to join me.